this, and a lot of that is related to the request for from the Lahontan Board for the water quality data that was done on public lands. And so instead of just handing that over, like I said, it's going to be handed over in a public forum. So it's going to be an education meeting. So there's the registration form for that. Some of you were at the Reading meeting. At the end of the meeting, one of the water board members, Tim, I don't know how you pronounce her last name, or something. She talked sort of ad lib a little bit. Kim did go talk with her and invited her to the March meeting, and she's agreed to be there. He has reached out to all the water board members and all of the GRAP people that are on the GRAP advisory or steering group, and she's so far the only person who has responded. But what I put together here, I stapled, was that registration, and I think I sent you the link online for that, so you can go for 1 or the 2 days. There is Morgan Duran is a colleague of mine who's a livestock advisor in Yolo and Solano counties and maybe part of Sacramento County, so he works over there like areas with Stone. Some of you guys know the Stone Ranch stuff. He was one of the people who was not able to talk, like Brian, you weren't able to, you signed up to talk, but didn't have a talk. So he shared an electronic copy of his comments to the state board, and then I also have, I think, so I put that there because I've already shared with you Ken Tate's comments on there, so I just wanted you to have that. But we can go talk a little bit. I mean, the board is saying, what they're saying is that they don't have a plan yet. These are listening sessions to get some information. One of the things that they said is when the question was asked that problems on Graceland was not a quote priority, but it's been something that's been discussed, and so that they were going to be working on it. At the hearings, I think both in San Luis Obispo and then at the Reading one, and I think Bishop was yesterday or today. I haven't heard.
No, it's.
Was it?
25th.
Oh, maybe it's okay. So I haven't heard, that one hasn't happened yet, but the vast majority of people in attendance were opposed to the grazing regulatory plan. We had a lot of ranchers. We also had some timber owners that spoke out. Collins Pine, Beatty and Associates. I think Soper Wheeler was in the room. I don't know if SPI, I wasn't there for the afternoon part, but part of that, their comments were, well, they're in the timber business. They do lease some of their ground for grazing, and if the fees, what they get back, and then what the potential fees would be, they would have to probably choose not to graze or not to lease out some of those grounds. So
Just not.
there was, so anyways, I don't really know. I know there's been some emails. There have been presentations made to both Sierra County Board of Supervisors and the Plymouth County Board of Supervisors. Lee Adams, who's a supervisor in Sierra County, is current chair of RCRC, which is a rural caucus. Rural counties. It's basically a rural counties caucus. CSAC. So they've been aware of sort of the situation. I think are monitoring it. Both boards have voiced support to do what is needed to sort of maybe push back or stop on that. Right now, we didn't really know what we're asking them to stop. I mean, they'll say they don't have a plan. I mean, part of the frustration is they have a real name and they have sort of a timeline with it. So I don't know. I know some county supervisors or a CAO spoke, like from Shasta County, and the Ag Commissioner from Shasta County spoke at the hearing last week, basically in opposition and what the costs would do there. So we could rehash. I mean, I don't know that it's beneficial to totally rehashing all the things that people didn't want to do. I just don't know. Part of the thing was like the next steps. I don't know if some of you guys were at the meeting. Do you have some things you wanted to suggest? Or
I just have a question. Is Tam, is she on an advisory board to the GRAP team?
no, she's on the state water board.
She's on the state water board.
Yeah.
So how many people?
No, she's on the board.
How many people are on that board?
I forget whether it's, I want to
And
say
are there other
7 or
people?
9.
So they've also been invited to go to?
Yeah, he's invited that, I mean, and that's, again, there's the board, most of the people that we're working with are staff, but
Yeah.
staff provides input, it's kind of like, here, Randy is staff, but the board of supervisors are the ones who make the decisions on the
So
stuff.
she's up there.
Yeah, so she's at the decision-making level, and, sometimes those decision makers have a grasp and understanding of things, and sometimes all the other things that staff usually have is more intimately involved, and they are, the board is kind of fed whatever staff needs. So some board members are more engaged in things than others, so.
Well, that was one of the criticisms, wasn't it, that there weren't really any high-ranking or folks with real leadership capacity that showed up at the hearing sessions.
Right, and if it was supposed to be listening sessions, like at the first one, they didn't even record them, and there were not very many of the GRAP team there to even hear. So how, if you're supposed to be the body that's supposed to be developing or figuring out if you're gonna develop something, and you're not even there to listen, and there was no recorded means of that, it kind of gave a message that we don't really care. I mean, whether that's the case or not, that's kind of the message that was taken home is, we're having a listening session, but I don't really need to listen there. I mean, so they did have, they were recorded at the Reading meeting. Exactly what didn't happen with that. I mean, I think some of you heard Kirk Wilbur's comments. He's still waiting. They had those invited sessions in November with industry, the environmental community, and academia, and no notes have been forthcoming, have come forward from those meetings yet. They also haven't opened the science portal because they're wanting to have, science needs to be uploaded, and that's supposed to be part of what they're gonna look at as they're moving forward. So the science portal isn't open yet. So I think a lot of those comments were shared, and a lot of people had real concerns that this didn't become another irrigated lands program, which is very paper heavy and fee on the users. Tim Copeman asked if there was some money in the budget, meaning the state budget for this, it was no. But so that means that cost was probably going to be borne by the end user. There also was, and I think, I forget who the gentleman was, but it was sort of put out that even though there wasn't money, you have reallocated. If you were a board staff member and you were working on X, and now you're gonna work on grazing regulatory, that is a redirection of public dollars. So that kind of, he and I also took exception to a comment that there wasn't any, there wasn't any board costs, because that's still a public cost there, so. I don't know, you guys wanna share? Niels, you weren't there, but you have some questions, and I know you have some concerns with some things on some of the grazing lands.
Well, I'm just, one thing I'm still grappling with is, what exactly does this, well, obviously no one really knows what it means, but why would it discredit something like the Upper Feather River Watershed Group that's been doing due diligence and taking all this data and doing all this work? How does this proposal interact with groups like this Upper Feather River Watershed Group? And then also, as an RCD member, my interest and concern would be, how do local organizations like RCDs assist landowners to react to this new thing? So those are my main questions. I still have some procedural gaps in my understanding of what's being proposed and why. And those are my main things.
It's difficult to even know what is proposed.
I think that's part of the plan,
But
because they didn't have to answer any questions, because the people said they don't
crop
know.
is grazing, and it's not grazing, it's not chickens and ducks and sheep and goats, it is cows, and that is it. That's all I heard was cows.
But most of the people in the room were cows, but some of the questions that they had on there, what is grazing and who should it be included in? I think some other questions, should it be commercial operations or not? And should there be a herd size or not? Those were some of the questions that they put up on the PowerPoint at the beginning, so maybe those were some things that came out of the San Luis meeting. But some of the questions that they have in the fact sheet, it's like, how should grazing be defined? What does a successful regulatory program look like? Your first question about, with regard to the irrigated lands program, what they have said is that this will be separate from the irrigated lands and from the CAFO, or there's some programs with dairy on the, like the North Coast or Region 1 or whatever that one is that's along the coast, that it would be separate. The reality is in our watershed, a lot of people will have upland and then down into irrigated land. And some of our upland places don't have any, what, like Bill Thomas said, have no live water. They maybe would have perennial streams, some of them don't have anything, or maybe they have a stock pond or something on that. But stuff runs off of, if there's gonna be quote runoff, it's usually gonna be leaving the upland, going through the meadow that we're already capturing, doing the water quality monitoring in the meadows, and we're in compliance there. What I heard from a lot of people is their concern is another very heavy bureaucratic, paper-laden, time-consuming, fee costing program that has nothing that goes on the ground for management practices.
And they're leaving a lot of room for interpretation by being vague, obviously, right? It sounds like they haven't really put out too many details, and then it makes it easier for us to all be concerned about what it might mean.
Yeah, and I
Whereas
think that is.
we don't really have concrete stuff.
Right, and the concern is based upon the lack of trust in what has happened with past programs, or even like, we've had invited people up and have looked at practices that are implemented across the watershed and been told that there was going to be sort of a reduced low vulnerability or whatever, they changed the terms and it was gonna be less bureaucratic and less expensive. And the reality is that really hasn't come to fruition in the 8+ years since that was shared.
So do any of you have any idea of what timeline they're looking at?
No, on the fact sheet, they say they, like I said, they have the invited sessions in November. They have the public listening sessions this month. They had 2 already, one in San Luis and Redding last week, and then next week, I guess, is Bishop. And then they're supposed to be reviewing stuff and have, develop an initial proposal. I mean, this is on the backside of here's the timeline. So that's part of the deal, that when they, on one side of their mouth say, well, we don't have anything yet, and other people who've been watching this, because for the most part, the first time I heard about this was at the Upper Feather River Watershed Group meeting when I found it on my phone. I was looking for something else, and so I shared it with you guys at that October meeting in Greenhorn.
Yeah.
But there's some people who have been watching the regional board. I think some of those are from the North Coast region. They said they've seen some little deal about raising regulatory program for a couple of years. So they feel that there's been discussions happening at some level, but don't really know what it is. So there's that whole transparency.
And has anybody in this group talked to the Mahan, like to Cindy Wise? Because I noticed that she's listed as like a part. Like, would it be worth? I've met Cindy before over in Susanville at a Susan River Watershed Group meeting. Should I call her and ask some questions?
You could ask her some questions.
I'm just curious about this whole thing.
The lead in it, okay, Holly?
That's what the has been said, is that Lahontan is the lead. I mean, most water quality things have been handled on a region by region basis, and there's like 9 regions. They do have some statewide programs. I think that's what they said, like Mercury, and I forget what the other one was that they said. So they're looking at grazing to possibly be a statewide thing, and what everybody's said, they didn't say it at that meeting in Redding, but what I heard from quite a few folks, and some of them were the attorneys on those advisory conference calls, that it was coming from Lahontan was the lead entity on there. And I think even Ben might have said that. So Ben Litton is the person from our region that we've been working with on the plan, and even though he said we have no water quality impairments associated with grazing in the Upper Feather River watershed, that is not exempt us, as there's the quote potential for impairment, so that means you'd be subject to any regulatory program that might be developed.
Plus potential on streams that aren't, there is no problem. They want to keep the same.
Baseline. Yeah.
Yeah, things are good now, then we want to keep it that way by protecting them from the.
So there were, and I think some of you know that, it was shared both, I know both RCDs. In 1995, the state board adopted a voluntary rangeland water quality program. And what that was there was to be education and plans, and basically it was cooperative extension and NRCS that were the outreach of working with ranchers up and down the state to help on developing ranch water quality plans. We did a number of those from 1994 through 2002 here in Plumas and Sierra counties. Extension chose not to be the keeper of those plans, and at that point in time, the two RCVs, it was at that point American Indian Valley, it hadn't changed to Feather River yet, and Sierra Valley, did not want to be the keepers of kind of like the third party of keeping those ranch plans. I'll have to be very honest, I know of a handful of producers who did an excellent job of completing all that. We had a lot more, I'd say about 75 people, some most from Plumas here, but some also from Tehama, Lassen, and Nevada County that participated in the workshops and did some of the assessment, started on things, exactly what they're doing or how they did with their plan, I don't know. At that point in time, because again, some of that was before Dan was here, but one of the prerequisites, if you had done that ranch water quality plan, it helped when you went to NRCS with some of the, I don't know if they were equipped, whatever the programs were at that point in time, because you kind of have to do a farm plan with, or ranch plan or something with them, and so this was a jump start on that.
And there was funding to support that through UC.
It was a program direction, so you're gonna do your own plan. I mean, what we did is sometimes I charged a nominal amount maybe for copying, or if we did lunch, we did some over a series of weeks. You know, the largest attendance was probably one we did over a 3-day period at the Benton Grange Hall. We did some, you know, at the social hall. We did, I don't know that I did any in Taylor's, we did several in Quincy and out that way. So I had, again, Indian Valley is kind of a tough group as far as participation. I had.
What are you saying? Come on. We're not there.
I mean, I had more participation from American, Meadow Valley, Sierra Valley, and then Lassen County and Tehama County, and not too much from Indian Valley. But,
Okay.
so one of the
So you're
things
saying,
that some counties are still doing
Everything.
that and have done that and have stepped up, or maybe the RCD is playing a bigger role or whatever. So one of the things is maybe you dust that back up. The state board agreed and adopted a voluntary compliance program. And then if that wasn't happening, you would go, there was kind of these level 2 and 3 or something else. And so, you know, some people were advocating maybe you go back to that, because if there's not a real problem, why are you, you know, that's the, I think, a real frustration. People say, well, what is the problem? And they can't say, it's just there's a potential.
right, and it sounds, based on some of the emails I got from you from Ken Tate, there's frustration because it sounds like the state boards are discrediting a lot of the work that's been done to date, right? Sure.
Yeah.
So it seems like until we have clear direction about what they actually want, we shouldn't do anything, right? Because otherwise we're like, oh, let's try this, and maybe the board's like, well, that doesn't matter.
So I mean, part of the deal is I don't know, because you don't want to be crying wolf because you don't really know what it is. But I think it's, so I'm up for, part of the deal was just to have an update. So that's kind of what's on the agenda here. So everybody has that.
Crying wolf, it says the goal is to develop regulatory strategies that set forth requirements for livestock grazing that address potential impacts to water quality.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's in the fact of just saying what they say, because they don't have a plan. You don't even have like a skeleton of anything that you can look at. And when they ask the questions on the back side, right.
Yeah, they have.
Well, that's where I'm going. What they're going to do, if they stick to this timeline, is development of initial proposal in 2015 and CEQA scoping. That's moving quite a bit. I mean, to develop a proposal quickly.
This is the exact same steps the new deputy RWM lands program took. You know, they said, oh, it's a clean slate, we're starting over from the ag waiver. They had these scoping meetings, laid all these options, we all come and comment. And they already had their timeline just like this and fell in order. And in their final draft, they're able to say, yeah, we incorporated, listened to the stakeholders and incorporated all these options and stuff. And they already had their plan.
Right.
It's just, the fact they're not transparent with it so we can jump in and comment or make suggestions, it's just.
Right, because I don't see how you can have that timeline if you don't have something.
I mean, look at the buying process hearing, it's a 2-year process. And part of the process is to get a lot of input, not to draw conclusions at the beginning. There's a framework to work within. So they must have some idea where they're going, because they've identified a goal or basically what they think the problem is.
And one of the comments, and I forget, it was from, I think from one of the timber companies, but he's kind of a big guy that's soft-spoken. What I heard or took away was, there's already like the TMDL process, and there's already processes out there, like if you're really abusing something, they can come and do something, so why do we need to develop some plan right here? And the responses to that didn't make any sense
Was
to me.
potential again.
Yeah, so
Right.
versus you already have a mechanism, like if, you can already go and do something to you as the bad, land manager. Why do we need to develop some hoops and hurdles and crap for everybody else?
So that it never ever happens, I guess.
No, so they can.
Do you know what I mean? So, not that if it's going to be, if it's polluted, then they can come and do something, but they want to stop it before it becomes pollutant to go do something about it. Their potential.
Just from the experience in the other program, you guys, the staff is already bulldozing down, they're steamrolling down this road, they're gonna follow through on developing this program, so our energy should be in educating the board, that decision-making board itself, and getting our elected representatives to pipe in and just, so that board can say, well, this is needed, or we can see it's not needed, because when it comes to that meeting, like at the irrigated lands, when you've got this staff that's done all this research and all their legal counsel and all this presentation, and the board's asking questions that they should have asked 2 years ago, they're not up to speed on what their staff has even done, or what kind of direction they're going with the program. They just listen to it at a few meetings and then they vote on it. So I think our energy should be in really just bombarding that decision-making board of the state water board, those 7 board members with our input.
Yeah, I think the Bishop listening session is gonna tell us a little more, because you've got people who've been dealing with law. I think we were sent the cupcakes to, and everything sounded good, or they didn't know. And I talked with 3 of them afterwards, and, I don't know how to judge character on these people, because I've never really dealt with something like this, but they were all very cordial and, seemed very, but we talked to Tam afterwards, and I was glad she got up and spoke, because at least it would seem personal.
Right.
Like she cared enough to address us as
Right.
people instead of just acting like. And Carol talked to her about her tour, and so the board of supervisors, Paul's gonna try and demand that they come up here. So,
For
we
like
can-
a public education.
yeah, get them up here and see what they're
On the ground.
on the ground and
And
see
there were
what.
quite a few invitations at the meeting.
Yeah, so,
Right, and I know, because Kathy before, several people said, we want you to come out, and again, I think it has to be at the board decision-making level, because otherwise it's gonna be like what Joe Karowski or whatever his name, we have this level out, you spend a lot of time, they give a lip service basically, and nothing ever changes, because they don't have the ability to influence the decision makers, so.
So we learned, just to give you an example, we learned yesterday at a meeting on water quality certification for the Upper Feather River, North Fork Feather River PG&E facility.